So how do we sustain our mental abilities? How can we not let the effects of aging actually impact our cognitive development, our cognitive functioning? Developmental researchers studied age-related changes such as in memory with cross-sectional studies comparing people of different ages and longitudinal studies retesting the same people over a period of years. Age is less a predictor of memory and intelligence than is proximity to death. As death approaches, cognitive decline typically accelerates, and this is referred to as terminal decline. So what themes and influences mark our social journey from early adulthood to death? What is the social development like in someone who is an adult? We often talk about the midlife transitions. Also, sometimes when people say this is a midlife crisis, this usually occurs in the early 40s when people realize that life will soon be mostly behind them instead of ahead of them. The social clock is the culturally preferred timing of social events such as marriage, parenthood, and retirement. This clock varies from era to era and culture to culture, and also within cultures, including specific subgroups. For the 1 in 4 adults who report experiencing a life crisis, the trigger is not age, but rather a major event such as illness, divorce, or a job loss. Chance events have lasting impacts, deflecting us down one road rather than another, and we might be able to look at individuals, unfortunately, who've been affected by the hurricanes that have hit different parts of the U.S. to understand what that specific event, which could be a chance event, in some cases, even though we knew it was coming, that may change their path from what it was typically going to be prior to that event. Love. Love is a big part of our adulthood. Adult bonds of love are most enduring when sealed with commitment, such as a marriage or civil union, with satisfaction related to shared interests and values, and mutual emotional and material support and self-disclosure. Marriage is also predictive of happiness, sexual satisfaction, income, and physical and mental health. Compared with their counterparts of 30 years ago, people in Western countries are better educated and marrying later. And this may help explain why the American divorce rate, which surged from 1960 to 1980, has since leveled off, and it's even slightly declined in some areas. Trial marriages, which are related to higher rates of divorce and marital dysfunction. More and more people tend to be meeting their partners online. Work is also a big part of our lives as adults. I am an organizational psychologist by education, and I study how psychology and work kind of fit together. And one of the things we talk about for work is it provides a sense of competence, accomplishment, and self-definition for many of us. Who are you often depends a great deal upon the answer to what do you do. And few students in their first years of college or university can really predict their later careers. There's also research that shows that most of us will have more than one career in our working lifetime, which is actually, I think, very exciting since most of us, or all of us, are multi-talented, multifaceted individuals who will do well in multiple types of careers. I do think it's important to actually think about how you would, from this point forward, put together a loosely planned career timeline. Because happiness is about having work that fits your interests and about what you can be proud. And I think another way to also say that is a lot of us find our work and a meaning of work and satisfaction when we know that we are using our skills and abilities in a meaningful way, and we know that we are impacting or having an impact either on the lives of others or in a specific field. So how does our well-being change across the lifespan? Positive feelings grow after midlife and negative feelings decline. Older adults report less anger, stress, and worry and have fewer social relationship problems. Brainwave reactions to negative images diminish with age. At all ages, people are happiest when they are not alone. Now that is true on average, but we also realize that individuals such as introverts still need companionship, but they tend to not have large social circles, either as a teenager or an adult. And it does not really mean that because they do not have those social circles that they are not happy, but they probably will have less of that as an introvert versus an extrovert. So throughout the course And throughout psychology, we look at three different things that impact what happens as we develop as a human and as we function. We look at our biological influences, our psychological influences, and the social cultural influences. All three of these can help promote well-being and successful aging. In the biological influences, we talk about no genetic predisposition to early cognitive or physical decline, having appropriate nutrition or access to nutrition. In the psychological influences, we talk about individuals may have an optimistic outlook and they have a physically and mentally active lifestyle. And my recommendation to each of you is to read, and do it in short bursts. I read a lot of books. I can't read for a long time. I read maybe 5 pages to 10 pages at the most in books. But I think reading is actually one of the things that helps keep our minds active as we start to experience some of the cognitive declines that come with our advancing chronological age. And social cultural influences, support from family and friends, the cultural respect for aging, depending on how it's viewed in that particular culture or subgroup, and also experiencing safe living. A loved one's death triggers what range of reactions? As we advance in age, we realize that unfortunately death will become more and more a part of the experience we have through the end of middle adulthood into later adulthood. Most of us will suffer and cope with the deaths of relatives and friends. For most people, the most difficult separation is the death of a spouse, a loss suffered by 4 times more women than men. Grief is severe when a loved one's death comes suddenly and before it is expected time or its expected time on the social clock. Grief reactions will vary by culture and individuals within cultures, and I think if you look at the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, if you self-reflect on maybe a loss you realize someone experienced in your family or you personally experienced, you can see, depending on the circumstances of that person's particular passing, that those stages probably varied in terms of timing and intensity as you experience, unfortunately, that loss or the person experienced that loss. That brings us to the end of Module 13, and this is actually the end of human development. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I would just make sure you recommend to review the PowerPoint and review the modules for 12 and 13 for our third quiz, which will be this week.